Yo gamers, what is up? It's GoldDemon12 here, back with another video about Honkai Star. No, yeah, guys, we're here talking about a Prydwen tierlist video. Uh, I know some people probably don't like the fact I'm kind of spamming these, but to be honest, there's a reason. One, I like talking about the game. Two, they get views. Let's just keep it blunt, boys. They push in numbers, all right? That's just how it is. A lot of the times it's because people don't necessarily agree with me, and that is what it is. I like reading your comments, right? So always comment whatever your questions or your thoughts down below. Read them helps me improve, and obviously all that stuff, right? So about this tier list, I just want to say if you've been watching my previous videos or my live streams, you probably have known my thoughts on, well, the placement of this particular character that we are talking about, and that is Adventurine. Now, I just want to say it, I was right. Sorry, the ad distracted me. Yeah, I was right. It's very obvious if you looked at this dude's kit at all that he was contestant, if not better than Fu in some cases. Now, a lot of people aren't gonna like that. They're not gonna like that I'm saying that, but this is a fact that he competes with Fu Xuan, and it's just obvious. All right, he's a very strong sustain, and he does many things. Now, there's something I want to point out that I neglected to point out in my previous videos talking about this, because my previous one was very long and I was talking about the criteria, right? And as I've said, I don't necessarily agree with all points of this criteria, especially because one of their criteria that is proven and it's stated in the changelog is the fact that they use usage rates. I disagree with this heavily, and I think it is complete bullshit. I'll just say it right. Right. Fuck. I'm slurring. Sorry. Not slurring. Whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. I think the using usage rates as a statistic for a tier list is stupid and completely pointless. It also will give the wrong sense to the reader or the viewer about the power of that unit, because a unit can be very powerful, but nobody uses them. And I don't think that's good or provides proper understanding for a character's kit, right? So let's just use Yukong, for example. Yukong is strong, however, nobody uses her. And there's reasons for that. It's because she's very gimmicky, and well, unless she's E6, she suffers a lot, right? And even before E6, she's downright bad, but I just think she's downright bad in general. But that doesn't mean that, oh, because nobody uses her, she should be in D tier, right? Same thing goes for like Arlen, right? Arlen should be based purely on his performance, not the fact that nobody uses him. I think the fact that usage rate is at all used to determine a character's tier in this is stupid, and this is one of my biggest problems with the tier list. All right, I'll say it outright. I think usage rate, it should not be a factor. It does not make any sense to include as a factor for how strong a unit is. All right, I'll just say that right now. And I've got other problems with this tier list, but uh, I'll get to my main point here. Is that they define their sustain role, right? And this is what I neglected. I didn't check the about tier list section, right? And how they split it up, right? And there's an important notice that people don't understand, that it is alphabetical order for these characters. So in case you see one from the other one, it's not in any particular order. It's by their actual name, right? And then the thing that I neglected to talk about is the categories, right? And so we've got the categories of damage dealer, a character that focuses on dealing direct damage and perform their role unhindered by enemy type and enemy element for composition or team composition, right? So yeah, this unhindered part is a big play in a character's kit. And I do think that is actually fair, because a unit that is very gimmicky or hard to use obviously will suffer versus somebody who you just click one button and do damage, right? And so I do think that's actually very fair to talk about. Specialists are characters that excel under specific circumstances, carrying a unique role that offers, or sorry, that often requires different divergent playstyle, right? This would be for the other characters that are, more niche, right? For example, breakers can deal monstrous amounts of damage, or crippling crowd control, and synergists introduce entirely new team archetypes, right? Uh, so they label synergist as doing new team archetypes, and they also do it down here, so I'll talk about that. Amplifier characters who do not focus on dealing damage, but instead amplify the damage other teammates deal by granting allies buffs or debuffing enemies. And sustain characters who are capable of keeping the team alive. I think because of the way the game goes, they need to factor more than just keeping the team alive in for sustains. I don't know if that's their only factor. It kind of sounds like it does based on this wording, but personally, I think they should factor in everything a sustain does. Okay? That's just my thoughts. I don't know if they do because it's not. I don't know if it's directly stated. I'll read the Adventurine thing in a minute, but just keep that in mind. Obviously, there's their marks. It's the ranking of the character. There's RNG machine, which we already understand what that is. Breaker is a character that specializes in break damage, and I will be doing an upcoming video on all about break and about my thoughts on the healers. So look forward to those. Right, it'll be very interesting to watch those two. And then Synergist, a character whose power drastically increases when one or more specific characters accomplish it or accompanies them on their team. These characters are often the focal point of the compositions they are a part of and open up new archetypic gameplay. All right, now that we understand all that, let's look at the change log. Adventurine has been added. Exceptional sustain, ability to nullify most end-game damage via his shields, true, which serve not only pseudo healing. I'll be honest, I don't like their verbiage here or word use here, right? I really think we should just be accurate and factual with terms so we can avoid misinformation and misunderstandings, right? Uh, I I think this entire term of pseudo healing bullshit. Just say he provides shielding for your team, which makes them tanky, right? It's not pseudo healing, it's preventative damage. I'll just be honest there. But also drastic increase in effective hit points for all characters on the team. Well, yeah, I mean that's HP. I don't I whatever that's fine. It's just semantics, right? At the end of the day, nothing crazy. These shields are easily accessible, consistent, and skill points and aren't skill point intensive, and also provide 50% effect res. By the way, the 50% effect res thing, it's not actually 50% chance to ignore debuffs. There's a little equation for how it works, but the thing to understand there is that if you build up to 100 effect yeah, 100 effect wes, uh, you will be completely immune to debuffs, right? So keep that in mind, and that's one of his most powerful abilities is the fact that himself and his allies can now become completely immune to debuffs, and that is huge, and people need to recognize how powerful that is, right? Granted, that's one of the things that we can talk about where his defensive utility scales of how strong your other units are built, right? If your units are completely like if your like supports are terribly built, they've got no effect res, they only have their one set that they need, nothing else, then you won't get the full like defensive utility that he can provide, because he can provide you complete immunity to debuffs and tankiness, right? So he's going to scale with how much you invest into that support character, right? This is why you want to invest into your support characters a lot, because, well, again, and this mainly goes for the broken keel like supports, right, where they'll get extra effect res, they're already building it too. The more you invest in them, the more you'll get out of it, right? Because then you'll have full uptime no matter what, and you won't struggle in the modes, because guess what? Your character's never going down because they're immune to the debuffs, right? So that's something to keep in mind there. Positioning Adventurine firmly as the best shielder in the game, well, obviously, with a strong stake as the best overall defensive unit as well. Can I just say I was right? I was right. Listen, I've been yapping this whole time talking about how he's really strong and contest with Fu, because I'm not delusional like some people are, but it is what it is, right? It's very obvious what some of these characters do in terms of strength with just reading their kit, right? You don't really, well, you should obviously look at gameplay, but I'm just saying like it was very obvious how strong he was from before he even came out. Sustain alone is enough to earn a top spot. So they do mention it. Okay. Adventurine also provides some, if not only the best break of any sustain. Breaking the target is an additional defense property, and that's one of the reasons why Ruan Mei is so good. And to be honest with you, I don't actually know what his break units are, or his toughness damage is. I don't actually know. Uh, it's 10 per hit. 90. Wow, 90? Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, this is RNG, but like 70 on hit and then a 90 ultimate. Yeah, fair. Thanks to his ultimate follow up, yeah, the combo ultimate follow up. But this, he provides utility in the form of 3-turn debuff that boosts crit damage. Yeah, acheron and ratio. Capable of doing decent personal damage with the right investment. True. Again, he's a character that you get more out of, and like I said earlier, like 2 minutes ago, you get a lot out of the more you invest into him, right? Like again, once you get your like 4K defense minimum, pretty much, and then you go past that, is when you start seeing like, oh yeah, he's really crazy, right? Each of these reasons are enough to put him well and truly to the playing field of the big three. Ho Ho, Luocha, Fu Xuan. I think we could knock Luocha out of the big three, to be honest with you, but that's a whole nother discussion. But what takes Adventurine a step further is his absurd follow-up synergy, which gives him the edge to be placed in S+. So saying his synergy with follow-up characters puts him in S+. I think he's an S+ regardless of the follow-up synergy, but sure. They moved Yangqing up, which we don't really care about. Now Yangqing has got a better like access to shields, right, with Adventurine, and that's what they do say. But the same can be said about Arlen, because Adventurine is technically Arlen's best support, and now realistically, Arlen is actually runnable because Adventurine is out, right? Because you have way better shield up time, which completely removes the downside of not having your shield up time as much as with Japard. So Arlen's gotten better with this as well, right? But that's here nor there. He's still really hard to run, but yeah. So yeah, it's already been like 10 minutes, right? Or 11 minutes. Let's get talking about this tier list here. So the focus here obviously is Adventurine. We already know how strong he is, or at least hopefully you know. He's very good, right? I've already talked about him for so far. It's very obviously he's an S plus, right? I have no issues with this, no arguments against it. I only have arguments for it because of everything he does, right? I think he's very strong and deserves to be an S plus, right? I don't really think I need to talk about it, but he does a lot. You get a lot of shields, he does additional damage, and there's all the other utility. And in case people don't understand, let me just pull up a list. All right, I pulled up my little chart that I've got for stuff like this. Not stuff like this. I just made this before, but basically to compare him with his next competition in terms of preservation is Fu. They both provide tanking, right? They both give you, or at least he gives you damage as a DR, which is just more tanking, which he's already stacking his shields in first place. So same thing. Both SP positive, although he does have the benefit of having a 3-turn skill instead of 2. And then they're giving crit buffs very similar in that regard. He has a ER buff, so effect resistance, right? Which is arguably, again, if you build into it, better than the one-time resist for Fu per cast. Excuse me. And his base speed is higher too, so that plays into this overall, right? So keep that in mind. And then obviously he has his own CC resist for 1 turn every 2 turns, right? So again, very similar stuff, if not better on his end. And then obviously for Eidolons, he gets extra shielding plus crit damage buff, right? She gives crit damage buff. She has a revive. He has resistance down, which is, increase the damage. He has defense up, and then she gets energy recharge for herself. And then it's just damage for the other 2. And the light cone, again, provides the debuff and damage taken. So very powerful kit overall, even without his light cone, right? It does a lot, but yeah, that's there. So this is something I'm going to talk about in the healer video whenever I get to it, is that I don't think Huohuo's heals are enough personally. I don't like her healing, to be honest with you. And this mostly is because I'm more accustomed, or I wouldn't say I'm more accustomed to, but it is just a fact that the healing output of like Luocha and other characters is better, and I prefer that over what Huohuo provides. Obviously, Huohuo on like a DOT team provides way more than every other healer because you get the uptime with the ultimate and the attack percent that DOT team needs. And so obviously she's up here, but I'm just gonna say personally, I don't like her healing. I think people probably overrate her defensive utility because sure she cleanses, but it's not like it's cleanse on the turn. So if you're getting imprisoned, you're still being delayed in the turn, right? So it's not like Huohuo completely absolves like some of those issues, right? Versus Adventurine, who does if you do get 100% effect res, right? And so I just want to bring that up, right? And again, people always misconstrued what I say, and that's why these videos get, I guess, disliked, or because they probably just read the title and dislike it, to be honest with you, like the one Genshin video. But Huohuo obviously is good. She deserves to be this high, right? But I do think that defensively, these 3 are probably better. Now, some people are going to argue with me about the Luocha thing, but I do think Luocha is probably defensively better because of the auto cast, right? Because when you do get hit and you'd be knocked down 50%, boom, auto cast, instant heal. You're already back up. And plus, his healing output's just better in general, right? Luocha is just way too safe of a sustain, and that's why Adventurine is so good because he is like basically an upgrade for most teams, right? So, yeah, he's crazy. I do think Luocha is valid. And so I agree exactly with these placements, to be honest with you, 100%, right? Obviously, Ho-Ho's offensive out prowess is very strong and is needed for a couple characters, but it's like her healing output I don't think is there personally. I'll be honest. I think this is perfect for this. As for these healers right here, and the other sustains, I think this is pretty valid to be honest with you. Arguably Gallagher is actually better than Luocha, but it depends on your setup, right? A E6 Gallagher is very very potent, and I do think he can be better than Luocha in most setups. And in fact, for me, my Gallagher has completely replaced my Luocha except for one team, which is my Jingliu team, and that's because my Jingliu team needs the permanent heal up time because Bronya doesn't get healing from Gallagher. She doesn't attack, right? If I was running a different setup, right, or basically every other setup where you've got the supports attacking, then obviously Gallagher is performing on the same, if not better, level than Luocha because he provides more offensive utility and skill points, right? And there's no auto cast, right? But him at E1 with the cleanse is very good, and he's already immune to debuffs either way once you build him right. And so I think this is fair to put him here, but I can make an argument to where he's actually better than the Luocha in some setups, right? Just saying. Again, Lynx's net healing output is actually about the same as Natasha's, and Natasha has better like burst heals, and so it is kind of weird to see a gap between the two. But Lynx's synergy with Blade and other characters is valid, and so she just ends up being better. Plus, AOE cleanse is better than single target cleanse for the most part, and Lynx is gonna have pretty much permanent heal up time, right? Once she's built well. So yeah, I guess it's pretty fair to put her here. And then obviously, I think Japard can probably be moved up because of Acheron, but Adventurine does clearly gap him. So I mean, this is debatable. We can move her up or him up, right? That's fine. And then the other ones again, I think are fine. I feel like March is probably the worst. She does get the benefit from Acheron, but it's like I feel like you could realistically move Japard up and then yeah, move these two up because Bailu. I'll be honest with you. Let me actually pull this up. All right, this is where again this is related to my healing video that I'm doing, right? But you can see how here Bailu's healing output isn't actually all that impressive in comparison to the other healers. Granted, you do put these three numbers together for the net heal, but basically every other healer has more healing output than Bailu's actual healing output. And then she also doesn't have a cleanse, and so while she technically does give you it does scale depending on how much you are hit, right? I feel like because no cleanse and how she works per like net heals and it is slightly RNG too because it has to bounce to a different target. I think it's just objectively worse than every other healer and how they heal, and so I think Bailu's actually not good whatsoever. And I'll talk about this more, but just the way she functions, I don't think is at all worth it. And obviously there's a revive, but I'm never picking her over any of the other healers because it's just mathematically she, assuming you've got the like the standard setup basically nothing extra is just worse in that regard. And again, we can I'll save that for the video, but I just feel like that people aren't valuing these characters appropriately because if we're being completely honest here, you can see the numbers here. Technically, Gallagher has better net healing than most of the other characters in the game under the specific scenario, right? Like that's just how it is. But that's a whole nother thing, and yeah, I don't know. Bailu, I think, is really not that good, but yeah, otherwise I pretty much agree with the sustain thing, right? Nothing has changed for the amplifiers, right? I think they are about the same. In my last video, we talked about that. The only thing I can really say here is we need to move Pella up to the same tier as Silverwolf, and that's just fact. Sure, last time I did dog on Silverwolf a bit, and people didn't agree with me there, but what I said is still mostly true is that if we get somebody that gives and here's my point here, I'll show you on the actual, wait, actually, is it over here? Yeah. So my main point with the Silverwolf thing, right, is Silverwolf gives a certain percentage of her debuff so we can, and I don't remember off the top of my head, to be honest with you, but I'll input random numbers for defense shred. and res pin. And Silverwolf's typically only going to get 13 maxed out because of oh, whatever. I did it in the wrong column. Forgive me. Right. But yeah, Silverwolf is only gonna give X amount of damage increase, right, over what is 42% of the damage taken by the enemy, right? And my whole point with that is that if we ever get a defensive shredder that is AoE, but then giving you, right, higher damage in another category, it's gonna be better than Silverwolf if you are weakness effective, right? If you are type advantage, right? Because the res multi won't outscale you being type advantage and then having the other multiplier, right? And that's why I'm saying for a lot of teams and just in general, if we had a character that applied a higher percentage debuff in the other category while having the equal amounts of defense shred and AoE, they would be better than Silverwolf because that's just how the math works, right? This changes, however, when you have resistance on the target and then use Silverwolf to apply your 33% res down, right? Because then it is almost as if you were weak to that element, right? And so in this scenario, in that single target scenario, Silverwolf would be better because she's making it to where you don't have to cut through another 40% damage reduction, right? And this goes for if they are just regular resistance to it, like 20, right? Because then you'd get your default number is if, Silverwolf's already on the team, right? And so that's my whole point is that this is not like saying Silverwolf is bad, right? And obviously I was harsh in that video, right? I do think she's arguably overrated because people act like you need a Silverwolf when you really don't. I'm just saying factually in terms of how the numbers work in the game is that if we were to get a character that does this a similar defense shred, but then gives you damage percent in this category, it would be technically better than Silverwolf, right? That's my whole point there, is that you realistically, assuming you're already type advantage, mind you, replace Silverwolf completely with a character that gives you similar amounts of defense shred and does another thing, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully that clarifies my point there. It's like, I'm not bashing Silverwolf, I'm just being realistic with how the game actually functions. And that's why Pella deserves to be in this same tier as her, is because if you are in an AoE scenario and let's say they're Ice Weak, for example, Pella is just like the better option, right? And even if they're not Ice Weak, if you're in an AoE scenario and you're type advantage, why would you why would you summon 4? Why would you use Silverwolf over Pella? You wouldn't, because you'd want to kill all the enemies and not just the one, right? You see what I'm saying? And so like just because how the game works in numbers wise, I really think they should be in the same tier as each other. Like just be honest with you, like move Pella up. It just makes sense. And then like again, I don't really like how Asta functions, to be honest with you. It's very whack. She kind of needs her E6, but that's the point. And then I've got no comments on Hinya, right? And Yukong, only if we had enough skill points to actually manage her, right? She's very goofy, but she is very strong. Also, I believe last time I mentioned synergy points. You probably could add synergy point like marks to both Lynx and Gallagher. Gallagher would be for future reference, and Lynx would be because of Blade and Clara. You probably could do synergy on Japard given Acheron. Adventurine. Adventurine probably needs a synergy mark as well because of the follow-up team and Acheron. So that's something you could do as well. Yeah, just thought I'd point that out there. Because I do think the synergy mark probably should be placed on every character that is realistic to apply to them. And so that's my main point with that. Over to the specialist tier, we still got Kafka in S tier and we S plus tier, and we have Black Swan in S tier. Valid for both of these again. And this is, I say this every time, right? Because every time I get Kafka mains upset at me because I said her character wasn't in S plus tier, and that's only because, and again, I don't know why I'm getting hate when other creators say the exact same thing, but if we had a DOT character that was S plus, put Kafka in S plus. All right, I know she's an enabler. Obviously, she's an enabler, and obviously she's future proof for DOT teams because she is an enabler. But the facts of the matter is that if we don't have an absolutely broken dot character, then why is the person that's like why? Look, I'm probably explaining this wrong, But my whole point is that the investment is about the same as the other like top characters, and that it's hard for me personally to put her in S plus, but it is a valid place to put her in S plus, right? I don't want to spend too much time talking about Kafka. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, again, this totally fair. Uh, Topaz, again, I before would have put her down like lower, but given the follow-up team with Ratio and Adventurine, it's obvious that she finally has an actual like set team that she's in, and she deserves to be in this tier because of how impactful she is for, like that team, right? Yeah, I'm gonna keep this short here. I do think Gwen needs to be moved up, and Welt we can move up as well. I was mostly negative towards the Welt Acheron synergy, and I will say it's still not worth doing unless you are doing a pseudo sustained Welt with Ranmei. But I don't think Welt is like a bad character. He's pretty solid and he does some solid damage. So I think we can realistically move him up to A tier, given the fact that he also does work with Acheron, right? Um, Synergy Mark is something that they have added to him, and that's the same thing with Gwen. I think that is totally valid as well. But both of them should be moved up. It doesn't make sense to have Gwen below the other DOT characters when she performs arguably better in some scenarios, like with Acheron, right? And then when paired her with Black Swan, right, you can also get the DOT triggers. So yeah, it doesn't make sense why they're separated. And then Sashang and Fire MC. Fire MC is pretty solid and like as a breaker, but that's not realistic in MOC, right? It's more realistic in pure fiction. So this is kind of valid. Sashang is a weird placement, but yeah, I guess that's fine. As for the DPS characters, this might be a hot take, but after experiencing the unit more, right? And some people won't. I know some people won't agree with me on this, but this is just kind of a fact and how the characters function and all that stuff. The top three go in this order: Acheron, Jingliu, or let's do top five in this order, or I'll just keep listing it until I stop. Actually, I'm not sure. It's Acheron, Jingliu, Dan Hung, Doctor Ratio, Blade, Zila, Jingyuan, Argenti. I think it's probably in that order. It does get muddy after I said ratio, right? The top four set in stone. Oh, my bad. I skipped over. Let me redo that again. Acheron, Jingliu, Dan Hung, then Black Swan plus Kafka, then Dr. Ratio. That's the five. That's the five that I'm set on. I think it's just straight up, like, basically no argument for that. That's the top five. After that, you have like six, seven, eight. It's some toss up between Blade, Zila, Jingyuan, Argenti. It gets muddy after that, right? That's how I would order the top DPSs, and I don't want to see any arguments for this because I know Dan Hung Mangs get freaky about this shit, but like we're being realistic here. When you have a character doing similar damage to you, but it's much easier to run and has zero issues and is not bottlenecked by skill points, why the fuck are they not better? Let's being realistic here, right? I don't. There's like no arguments for this, like whatsoever. But they all belong in S plus tier. If not, put both Dan and Jingliu down and leave Acheron in S plus tier, if anything. Ratio is valid. Jingyu Wan, this dude feels like shit. I'm gonna just say it right now, bro. Listen, I've been using him more, even at like whale level, because I've got a mod of mine that is E6 Jingyu Wan. Bro, he feels like fucking shit. I'm gonna just be honest with you. What? There's a whole thing going on here, but unironically, I don't think he's an S tier. I'll just be honest with you. Um, Look, we can talk about Lightning Lord being blocked by a shield all day, or it completely whiffing the target because it's RNG bounce attack. But like, it's just look, it's fine to put him here, but put Blade up there and move Argenti back up. Let's be honest here. All right. I just that's a whole nother thing. I could probably do a whole nother video on that, right? Do another like regret video or whatever it is. QQ, same thing. I think QQ should be moved down. I think overrating the RNG aspect of her, are, I guess, underrating because, yeah, they're underrating the RNG aspect. It's too RNG to be realistic to put her in S tier. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Zila, I mean, on a full mono quantum team, she obviously performs very well. So like, I guess it's valid. But I can make similar arguments for like Blade and other characters. And Blade needs more help than that, but it, that's a whole nother discussion about that. And then everybody else I think is pretty valid. Uh, I think we could probably move Himiko up again. Move Argenti to A, move Blade up, move Himiko up. Uh, Yang Qing, again, I don't know enough about Yang Qing to really to say anything about him. And then all the other characters are totally valid. And Arlen could probably be moved up because of Venturine. Uh, I don't know if the MC is actually that bad, to be honest with you. But like, yeah, Misha deserves to be down here. And yeah, that's basically it. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Well, actually, pure fiction, real quickly. Pure fiction. Acheron probably needs a synergy symbol for pure fiction because she'll have a hard time gaining stacks without specific characters. So like probably need a synergy symbol. I know they moved Silverwolf up because of Acheron, but I just think she needs a synergy symbol. Jing Yuan, Argenti, I'll be honest, I think I'll say this again. I think Herta needs a synergy symbol. She needs somebody to enable her to be up here. Otherwise, she doesn't perform like this on her own, right? This is kind of misleading, uh, personally, right? So I'd give her the synergy symbol to deserve to be up there. All these other characters are fine. I feel like Argenti and Himiko could be. Nah, okay, so let me make this clear. Give the synergy symbol to Herta, Acheron, Himiko, Argenti, and Jing Yuan. Give it to all these characters because they do not perform that well unless they have somebody like Herta on the team or somebody to give them extra attacks like Sparkle or Ting Yun. On their own, they don't do that well, just flat out. They need the full setup to actually function in pure fiction, that or play into the buff more, right? They're not just like, oh, Unga Bunga, I beat pure fiction. No, no, no. They all need something really well. Argenti is the only one who arguably doesn't need that as much because of his passive and if they're fizz weak, you can do break Argenti, and there's even like negative cycle clears of pure fiction with Argenti when they're like fizz weak, right? So there's a whole discussion there. But I feel like you could unironically give the synergy symbol to all these characters. Um, Yeah, I think assuming you can get the kills, Zila is up here, but that one's debatable if they're quantum wake or not. And then I guess the rest of these are valid. Dan is actually valid down here. Before I didn't use him in Pure Fiction, and I thought he would be higher. But no, I used him recently in the most recent Pure Fiction, and fucking hell, even at E6, he feels like shit. Um, so yeah, leave him down there for Pure Fiction. Same goes with the rest of these characters. Incredibly valid. I was honestly surprised that Blade felt better to use in Pure Fiction than Dan, right? Even at E6, but that's a whole other thing. All these other characters are valid. Yeah, makes sense. As for the amplifiers, again, makes sense. All good there. Sustains, yeah, again, I talked about this last time, and they did rightfully move Gallagher up, so this is all fair. I think that's very valid. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, right? Literally just let me know anything, right? Or ask questions. Doesn't matter. I'll try to read all the comments, and of course, if you disagree, then tell me why you disagree. If you agree, tell me why you agree. All that stuff, right? I think everything I said here is pretty fair, and it makes sense. And if it doesn't, I'll try to further clarify. But I think it's very obvious where some of these characters lie in terms of strength. And like always, I disagree with many things about this tier list, but that's here nor there. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out my Twitch, and I'll see you guys next time.